Hello and welcome to Smarter Hospitality Talk. My name is Clayton. I'm here to present our very first episode of a series that I'm creating to help leaders and also employees in the hospitality industry work smarter but not harder, but also get down to the details of what really affects operations in current times and how to resolve those quickly and easily. Today's first episode is going to be the power of presence, building teams that lead themselves. We all know that productivity is important to not only us leaders, but also for our employees, and we expect that each and every day. Before I get started, I want to go over a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Klayton Dennis. I'm a hospitality management consultant. I've been in the hospitality, entertainment, and attractions management industry for the past 9 years. I really do consider myself a jack of all trades. Most recently, I've been in general management and operations management. I have a very strong passion in marketing and the overall business development, seeing businesses grow, specifically those small businesses, and training and developing teams. I've worked for companies like Carnival Cruise Lines, Celebrity Cruises, Princess Cruises back before the pandemic in the entertainment production operations management. And then around here in Branson, Missouri, I worked for Yakov Smirnoff. I worked for an attraction up at Lake of the Ozarks called Stark Caverns, where I was the director of operations of a show cave that's seen approximately 30,000 guests every single year. And then most recently, I worked for American Cruise Lines as a hotel general manager on board one of their ships, managing the full operations of a floating hotel. I'm going to take this experience that I've gained working for all of these companies because I am a jack of all trades. I'm applying those to each of these little bite sized lessons to help you in the operations of your hospitality industry. Now, each of these talks is going to feature something that you can work on with your team or with your business and really calls to question how you operate as a leader. I think it's very important that as leaders, we look at ourselves in the mirror and we make sure that we're on the right path each and every day. And it's okay if those questions come to mind and we really either don't know the answer or maybe we have to answer in the way we really don't like. That's how good leadership sets themselves apart from this standard run of the mill management team. So each of these videos is going to feature what I like to call the wake up call since it is centered around hospitality. Today's wake up call is about the power of presence. And so these are some facts that I want to bring to light. Two-thirds of managers' week is usually spent reacting to avoidable problems, and that's according to the Deloitte Human Capital Study in 2024. Now let's break this down a little bit. Two-thirds of your week, so approximately, let's say 4 days of your week, are spent reacting to avoidable problems. That does not sound productive. This is what I like to call firefighting or putting out fires. It's not productive. It's typically just controlling chaos, and it's really not a good way to not only develop your business or your team, but it's really tiring for yourself as a leader. Now, I'm guilty of this fact because it is kind of where I started. I wanted to be Superman. I wanted to take on a little bit of everything, and I wanted to own it down to the finest detail. And I wanted to make sure that it was to my standard each and every way. And I'm here to tell you that I've learned very quickly over the past 3 years that that is not effective. It's not realistic. All it does is tire you out. It causes you to become more irritated in stressful situations. It causes you to make decisions that necessarily aren't the best. It also causes you to shut yourself out from your team as well as your leadership team. And you begin to kind of put yourself on an island due to the fatigue and the burnout that you may experience. Another fact, lack of daily leadership presence is the number one cause of service breakdowns and low morale, according to the Cornell Hospitality Report in 2023. Now, this is totally true as well. If you don't have presence and you're not on the floor and you're not visible to your team or your customers, or you're not visible at your business at all, it's really going to be your number one problem when it comes to service breakdowns, unhappy guests, low satisfaction scores, and high turnover rate. Not only that, if your team doesn't see you and they don't feel supported, then that's going to boost low morale. So, overall, I want us to keep in mind that presence is the missing link between structure and trust. So let's talk more about the power of presence. Presence does not mean proximity. So in today's talk, I'm not talking just about you being at the location or at your business. I'm talking overall, both in how we operate as leaders, how we are visible to our team, how we build trust, and how we remain consistent. So for today's purpose of talks, presence is clarity, presence is trust, and presence is consistency. We'll break those down a little bit more with some scenarios and ways that you can continue to grow as a leader. So this is one of the things that I've actually developed, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story. So most recently, I've coined this phrase, and I have to give full credit to one of my guests on board of American Cruise Line ship. The gentleman was observing me one day, and I was making my rounds around the lounge and checking in with the guests, seeing how their day was, because they just got back from excursions, and it was our cocktail hour. This gentleman and I, we had picked up really quickly and started to make a connection because we were both from Missouri. So he pulled me aside and he said, Clayton, I want to let you know you are a certain type of leadership style, and you're what I like to call LBWA. And I said, uh oh. And so in my mind, I'm quickly judging myself. I'm like, oh no, what does this mean? What does this acronym stand for? And he said, oh, no, no, don't worry. I can see the panic in your eye. It means you lead by walking around. And at first, I thought it was I took it as a compliment. And then later on, because that's the type leader I am, as I question everything, I run back through the day and see the good, the bad, and then also those question marks that you don't really know what the outcome was. And this was one that really stuck with me. So I had to write it down, and I wrote down lead by walking around. And it is a compliment because that is exactly how I lead my teams. I really am everywhere at once, and that's kind of the American Cruise Line's motto for officers is we're everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. And that's really how you have to be in a hospitality industry, but also in any type of business in today's time, is you really do have to get a good pulse, and you do have to be visible. You do have to be in a little bit of everywhere. You have to get your hands dirty. You've got to work in all departments. And that's the best way to lead because you know your operation like the back of your hand because you're in it every day. You're immersing yourself, you're observing the operations, and you're putting yourself in your staff's shoes, as well as maybe even looking from the guest standpoint of how does this really look? So always remember you can't feel a team's pulse from a spreadsheet. Now, we can get a lot of analytics from spreadsheets and reports and deep dive into our revenue numbers and our KPIs. But in all reality, operations, especially in hospitality, come from you actually immersing yourself in it. You actually working through those problems, you actually working with your team and building your team, and then having your hand on the actual growth of the business. That's the most important part here. And that's really what lead by walking around truly means. It's a fact that 1 hour on the floor equals more insight than over 100 reports. Visibility isn't about micromanaging, it's about understanding. So whenever I'm leading by walking around, I'm doing several things. I'm observing first and I'm coaching second. So I'm walking around and I'm observing how the flow is. I can usually pinpoint in an operation. It's going to sound crazy, but I can tell you when the plates are clinking around in the kitchen and I'm standing in the restaurant. I can tell you how quickly plates are getting out. I can tell you how the dish pit's going. I can tell you just by the sounds. I can observe nonverbal cues from my staff if they're in the weeds or there's certain key points because I'm constantly immersing myself in my operation that I can feel it, I can hear it, and I can just get those nonverbal cues that either something is awry or something's about to happen that I need to step in and coach. So I first obviously I'm going to observe, and then the next thing is when I'm doing these walking around sessions or what I like to refer as ship walks is I'm greeting my guests, but I'm also greeting my team. So I'm checking in with my team on all floors of the hotel or all around the park. Whenever I'm doing my walkthroughs, I'm checking with them, seeing if they need anything, how their day is going. Have a little bit of personal time where we kind of talk through some things or just share a joke, share a laugh, or just kind of blow off some steam, whatever you need to do. But I'm constantly engaging with my team. But then, most importantly, I'm constantly engaging with my guests because I want to get down to the nitty gritty right up front before it turns into a problem. And if you're visible and you are greeting your guests and you are conversational, then you're going to get to the bottom of those a lot faster than when it comes up in a post stay survey or it comes up in a review on Google. I'm also making notes. So, good, bad, and ugly, I constantly write down notes during my walks so that I know when I do another walk around that this was an issue and that needs to be resolved, or maybe it's a potential training, or maybe my team has given me an idea or noted something that they need. That's way I can be productive because 30 million things could happen in 5 minutes. So we need to be able to keep track of all the things that we've noticed on our ship walks or walk around your facilities and keep those notes well, and keep a good record of these, because if it's a recurring issue, then you know where your areas in which you need to coach and where you need to create maybe some policy procedure or SOPs. I also do what I like to call the white glove test at least twice a day. So I'll be walking through all of my public areas. I'll go along the tables or furniture. I'll rub fingers across. I'll make sure that there's no dust. I'll look in the corners of all the rooms and make sure there's no cobwebs. I'll check the light fixtures to see if there's any lights and there's any bugs inside the light fixtures. And I'll also work through a lot of the areas, just seeing if there's dust starting to accumulate on heaters or handrails or fire extinguishers or things that really catch my eye. And then finally, I follow up. I walk back through these areas at least 3 or 4 times every day at minimum. And so I'm going to follow up on things after each walk and make sure that they were either corrected if I had to give a coaching, or vice versa. Just start to follow up and see if things are starting to improve. Remember, visibility equals operational intelligence. So whenever we're watching and we're looking, we're observing, we're taking notes, we're gaining more knowledge and intelligence about our operations as a whole and how it operates. So why presence works? Let's look at the numbers because they don't lie. When you have presence in your workplace, according to the Gallup Workplace Report in 2024, you increase your team engagement by at least 21%. You increase your productivity by 17%, and you also lower your employee turnover by at least 30%. These are pivotal numbers here because just having a little bit of time to be more visible, not only to your guests, but to your team, but also you get that pulse point of your operations. You have a better grasp on it. You have more operational intelligence, and you're able to make decisions a little bit more quickly. And you're able to also um, be in more places at once when you have this good quality efficiency. So I use presence because I want to catch problems before they impact my experience. I definitely want to catch them before they turn into a guest review or a post stay survey. I lead by example. So this goes all the way down to the uniform. So whenever I walk out onto the floor or when I arrive at work, I'm in my uniform to the exact T and the grooming standards as my policy procedure handbook states. So this is leading by example. If I ask my team to go and scrub a toilet, it's because I'm there or doing it regularly with them. If I'm asking them to go and unload a truck because Cisco showed up a little bit late today, I'm there helping them unload the Cisco truck and get things put away where they need to go so that they don't feel that I'm just barking orders and then going and hiding in an office. I love real-time feedback, and that's what presence gives me. Is I get to get that good quality interaction with my guests, but I also get to hear their positive, negative, and neutral feedback, and I can pinpoint on when things are starting to become more consistent in negative versus positive. I can also give kudos to people whenever I do get that positive feedback from the guest in real time as well. I coach in the moment, so I never scald anyone for doing the wrong thing. I always use it as a learning opportunity and say, "Hey, just want to let you know next time, let's make sure we double bag that trash can." Or next time before you leave the room, could you make sure that you do a quick walkthrough, make sure you've got all your cleaning supplies, and just do a final check of everything, including just do kind of a white glove test of all the surfaces to make sure that we got everything before you head on to the next room. I'm always coaching, I'm always giving them tools and resources, the how and when and why. And then we're utilizing that to correct bad behavior, but also to increase productive and empowerment to my team as well. And finally, we want to always recover before it hits a review. And that's what presence allows us to do, because when you're in the operation and you're there in the trenches with your team, you're able to quickly jump in and resolve those issues before they become an actual issue. There are 3 levels of presence. There's physical, emotional, and operational. The biggest thing that I think everyone pays attention to is the physical and operational. We, a lot of times, until most recently, management is starting to shift more toward the emotional side of it. But let's break down each one of these. So, physical presence is you're being seen. You're walking your property. You're being seen by your guests, by your team. You're physically there. You're making an impact. You're actually staying engaged with your team. You're getting your hands dirty. You're washing the dishes. You're doing the laundry. You're cleaning the rooms. You're running tours. That's physical presence. You're actually there. You're making an impact. That's the most crucial one. The second most crucial one is our emotional, which is always remember to be kind. Remember that we are human. We do make mistakes. So remain human. Listen to your team, listen to your guest, care, and also lead with authenticity. So whenever a employee or a guest gives me negative feedback or gives me a pushback, to be honest, I feel like that's a gift, specifically with the guests. Whenever they give me negative feedback, that's a gift because they see something that could be improved. They see something that really impacted their experience, and 9 times out of 10, if they are giving you that opinion, it's likely that other guests have given that opinion before, and maybe it's hit your reviews, or maybe it hasn't hit your reviews. But always take those as a gift because you can recover from those, especially when they bring it to you, because they see you as authentic and listening and caring, and they think that you're going to go and make it a change. So always utilize that. And finally is the operational presence. So this is where you know your systems, you know your financials, you know the whole process from when the guest arrives until the guest exit. Um, that's how you know your operational presence, is because you know the pulse point. You have that operational intelligence because you know your operational presence. This is the method that I like to use whenever I'm teaching and I'm trying to get things to stick. So, whenever I roll out a new standard operating procedure or SOP or a policy or change things how we're doing it, the first thing that we want to focus on is teaching. And now, a lot of times, I think leaders think that just standing up and printing this out and posting it on the bulletin board is a good way to effectively train your team or have a quick little training session or coaching. But what I've really observed is I think that we forget that fundamental basis, that emotional presence, that we are human and we do need to listen, we do need to care. And so I think in that situation, we have to address the elephant in the room, and that is we are all human. And if I have a question of why I'm having to create this policy and procedure, then technically my employees are probably going to ask me why and what for we're bringing out this new policy and procedure. So whenever I teach, I always identify what it is, and then I also make sure to add the why and why it's important, because this triggers how they are going to remember how to do this. So when we teach, we always need to identify what we're teaching and why we're teaching it, because that's the first two questions that you're going to get asked is, why do we have to do this? Why is it important? What does it impact? And when you have those answers and you come to the table with it and then you teach using those two principles, then it's going to click a lot better. The second thing is trust. We have to have trust in that is a two-way street. If you don't trust your employees, they probably don't trust you either. Um, that's why I see everything as a team dynamic, because I can't make decisions that are going to impact my team and then leave them to figure out the mess that I've created. I have to trust in the process. I have to trust in my team, and building that trust with them takes time, but you have to keep that trust. Otherwise, whatever you're teaching or whatever you're trying to correct, it's not going to move any further than that point. So once you effectively teach, you build and gain and keep that trust, then the next thing is we're going to test it. We're going to roll out something new. We're going to see if it's going to work. Now, in this test, we're utilizing that ship walk or um, the lead by walking around. So we're going to observe it. We're going to take notes. We're going to greet and check in. We're going to check in with our team, see how things are going. We're going to check with the guest. How do you like this? And take that feedback, both positive and negative. If you created it, I know sometimes you have a little bit of an ego, and that's okay, because that's part of leadership. Is it's okay to have a little bit of ego, not too much, but take the negative feedback again as a gift, because chances are if one person says this is a problem, there's probably another person or somebody in the future that will also have that problem. So be genuine, listen to their concern, listen to their negative feedback, and then also thank them for all of this feedback, because it really does help you in the long run. And then finally, after we've let it run for a little while and there's little adjustments and we found that feedback, then we need to tune it. We need to change, we need to evolve, we need to adjust, and we need to make those changes to where it becomes more effective and more cohesive to not only our guests, our teams, but also for ourselves and our business. So remember, build systems, not superheroes. So the best ways to empower your team is going to be through policy and procedure. Your team from the very start, from day one, have to have clear roles and responsibilities and a handbook. They have to know the who, what, when, where, and why, and what are the consequences. When you clearly define what their roles are, so what their responsibilities on a daily basis, this can be their job description, but this needs to extend even further into like a daily checklist or from start to finish of your shift. This is your responsibilities. These are the things you have to do each and every day. And these are the things that you are responsible for in your role. Once you've clearly defined the policy and procedures, then you can start working on the SOPs or standard operating procedures. Now, there is a difference. Policy and procedures or handbooks are totally different from SOPs. SOPs are what I like to refer to as the steps of service or the recipe to success. If you're trying to accomplish better guest check-in, so you want to speed up your guest check-in, you want to incentivize them leaving your reviews at their checkout or during their check-in, and you want to make your staff look more confident, then the best way to do that is through a recipe to success. And so we're going to create an SOP. We're going to give the who, what, when, where, and why, and how. But then we're also going to lay it out step by step, 1 through 5, 10, however many steps it needs to be. But we're clearly going to define how to successfully check a guest in the most effective and quick way possible. That's going to set your team up for success. That's going to set you up for success, and it's going to accomplish that goal that you're trying to achieve. Finally, we have to support their decisions. So once you've got this information, you're empowering your team because you need to empower your team. And the reason why we need to empower our team is because we are not superheroes. We can't be everywhere all at the same time. It is impossible. It's not productive. And it just causes you fatigue and frustration later on, as well as ending up in burnout and then you looking for a new job. So, what we have to do is we have to start taking the reins and giving it to our team. We put up the guardrails because we set up policies and procedures. We've created clear roles and responsibilities, and now we've got our steps of service or our recipe to success through our SOPs. They now have the guardrails up. They can now work between the guardrails, keeping it in the lane and steering in the direction that you want it to go because they know very clearly how you want things to operate. You've got their trust now. You don't have to micromanage them. You're just going to do your walkarounds. You're going to check in with them. But the biggest thing in this to make empowerment of your team work is you have to just support their decisions. And that's both positive or negative. You have to use every situation, both positive and negative, as a learning experience. You have to tell them great job when they did things well. You've got to point out when things don't go right, but then you've got to give them kudos for making those decisions. You cannot punish them for making decisions that you've given guardrails for them to be able to make those decisions within. So you have to just use them as coaching moments. You have to coach them in the right direction and thank them for making the decisions and support it either way. You as a team can work through and create the positive outcome that you're wanting just by utilizing support, by keeping it a coaching sessions and using it as a learning tool. So let's talk about some presence killers. I've seen these a lot in the operations that I've worked in, other departments that I kind of co-work with, or even in businesses that I've been a guest in. The biggest thing is leadership hiding in offices. They're not out at the desk. You never see them. You only see them when something goes wrong. And that's not leadership. That is putting out fires. Um, they're also trying to be everyone's friend. Now, I'm going to stop here because this is a very important one. I have been working in the industry for 9 years, and my biggest thing it was probably back in 2017 when I started working for Carnival Cruise Lines and Celebrity Cruise Lines on board the ships. My biggest rule is I don't ever add anyone that I manage on social media. I very rarely give out my personal phone number unless I don't have another option. Like that's my way of communication for the company I work for. But I never add any of my current employees as Facebook friends because there needs to be a clear line defined. And this isn't me being mean, but it's me being honest. And owners should really take this in consideration as well because it'll help your decision making process. You are the leader. You are not the friend. And the reason why we have to clearly define that and we have to stick with it is because you must remain operational and mentally, behaviorally neutral. So, in the situation that you have an employee that is doing something that is a negative feedback to your business, you have to be able to remain neutral and you have to be able to go and discipline that individual without any type of personal connection. And it sounds cold and heartless, but that's the best way to operate in a business. And that goes for every employee. That goes from the dishwasher all the way up to my assistant GM. I am your coworker. I am a part of your team. I am your team leader, but I am not your friend. I'm not your family member. We are not family. We work together and we probably spend more time together than family and friends. But at the end of the day, I am your leader. I'm your leadership team. And so therefore I have to separate that line. That's a big failure on a lot of leaders' parts is they want to make everybody their friend and then they cloud their judgment and then they don't make the decisions that they need to make. They take everything personal and then they feel that everyone's going to take everything personal. You have to draw that line and when things are not meeting your expectations or your business is not growing the way you need to, you've got to not be the friend. You've got to be the leader in that situation, and you have to make tough decisions. So by keeping that line very clear, then you're drawing that line and making sure that people are doing what they need to do. So the next thing that we want to talk about is the presence to culture. So we want to turn our presence into a culture to where in the event that we're not on site or we're in a meeting that your team is empowered, you trust them and they trust you and you are confident that they will make the decisions that you need to make. But this is a culture change. This is something that you as the business leader, the business owner have to create. You've got to cultivate this culture for where you can be more productive in your everyday because your presence is known both whether you're present or you're off site. There should be no difference. If I'm gone on a week's vacation, my business should run seamlessly and flawlessly because my team know what the expectations are. They have clear roles and responsibilities. They have those guardrails with policies, procedures, and SOPs established. And now it's just a part of me trusting them to do what needs to be done and trusting that they're going to reach out to me if those things fail. So we're going to make it a norm and not the exception. So with this being noted, is we play by the rules unless Clayton's gone. That's a lot of times what happens in businesses. When the parents are away, the children will play. So we have to start each shift with our visibility. So walking through everything, checking in with our teams, checking with our guests, really getting those good, what I like to call ship walks or facility walks, getting those down to where your team expect it, but you're not necessarily on a schedule to where they just know that you're there. You're present, you're walking around, you're visible, or they just know you're there. Then we're going to highlight peer recognition. So we're going to celebrate the wins as a team. So, bring up something that somebody did well each and every day. Try to find something positive and coach that as a positive, and then try to coach that to the rest of your team. It is contagious, guarantee it. Keep an open door mindset. So this is how we walk, talk, and feel. Whenever I'm open door, I mean it. If they need me at 3 o'clock in the morning because they're going to be late in the morning because they need to take their kid, I want them to feel okay with texting me. I am there because I'm a leader of my business and I want my team to feel like I care and that I listen to their needs. I'm observing what their needs are and I'm making an effective decision that will impact them in a positive way. We use data as dialogue. So we ask and we don't accuse. So in situations, this kind of goes to that friends category there, but in situations that we do have to discipline, we focus on the data. We only review the evidence that's there to make our decisions. And this kind of goes with a little bit of everything. We have to make decisions based off of our data points, based off of security footage, based off incident reports, and based off of kind of interviewing our other individuals that were involved in incidents. We don't make any personal decisions. We don't make any personal assumptions because that's just going to lead you down a wrong path and that's going to break down the whole culture overall. And then we're going to model calm and chaos. I've been told numerous times in a lot of the positions that I've held, Clayton, I don't know how you act so calm in these situations. One of the best ones that I remember is um, I've had to do a lot of coachings and a lot of it's a negative performance coaching. And this a lot of times will lead to a write up, but it's because I've given them a chance. I've talked through how to improve as an employee and a coworker, and it didn't really go to heart. So, what I do is I listen, I stop, I remain calm, I allow them to tell me what happened. I never say, okay, um, Bob, Susan came up to me and said that you stole money out of the cash drawer. Can you tell me how much you stole out of the cash drawer? I always bring them into the office with a witness, and I always say, hey, there's a situation that has been brought to my attention. And I want to ask you up front, do you know what situation I'm referring to? This allows them to come clean. This allows them to bring me the details that I need to start moving in the direction that I need to go. But then it's very calm, because if you start pointing fingers right out of the gate of when something goes wrong or something is chaotic, what ends up happening is people get frustrated, they get angry, and it's very hard to recover from that. So keep a calm mindset. Once we've established what the issue that we're talking about is, I then calm as a human way. I start listening. Can you tell me why you did that? Can you tell me what led you to that decision? Because I need to get better understanding of what actually happened here. And I want to hear from you how you think we can move forward from this. And that gives them time, because it's opening the door for them to tell me all of the dirty laundry, but at the same time it's allowing me to collect the facts and the information, because most likely I've already went and interviewed the coworkers, I've already went and interviewed the people who are involved in the incident, and I already know the key indicators there of what the truth is. So once this person who is guilty of it starts to give me their side of the story, and it starts to pinpoint and lock in together as a one big puzzle, then I already know how we need to proceed moving forward. But the best way is to just remain calm in those situations. And I'm very happy that I'm able to share that information. And we'll do another talk later on when I get the series kind of up and going, about how to handle disciplinary actions and how remaining calm in stressful situations. So we'll create another topic on that. But um, just remember one thing from this slide: when presence becomes your identity, your team stop asking where the boss is. And that's very true, because when you empower them and they feel your presence even when you're not present, then they start to feel that they are running the business and that they are taking ownership in it, and they know that you have their back and that you trust them. So each of these talks, I'm gonna do a wrap up here, but a lot of these are going to be lessons that I want you to take the information that we've discussed, and I want you to start applying it as soon as possible, even the next day or even today after you're watching this. And I like to call this section the smarter shift. This is something that we're going to shift our way of operations, or we're going to shift our thinking, and we're really going to question our how we operate every single day. And so today's the smarter shift is going to be map your ship walk. So I want you to plan out 3 or 4 times a day at minimum how you would move through your facility, through your building, through your resort, how you would impact each and every department with your presence, and how you would check in on each and every department or each and every problem area 3 or 4 times a day in the most effective route possible. Now, I like to change up my route a lot. Number one, because I get bored of the same scenery. But more importantly, if I have a problem area, then that's going to be my first and my final place that I'm going to visit. So I'm going to check on those areas multiple times during my walk to make sure that things are moving smoothly, or I need to check on things that are there. I want you to look from top to bottom, because this is exactly what your guests do. It's a fact that in 2025, guests are very, very picky. They want a very clean, polished appearance of any place that they go, no matter if it's a restaurant or a hotel. So I want you to start looking in the eyes of the guest, which is look top to bottom. So from your ceiling down to your light fixtures and fans, all the way down the walls, the picture, the arts on the wall, and then down to the furniture, the counters, anything that's in that space, all the way down to the carpet or the floor. It's very important to look top to bottom. We're going to observe, we're going to greet guest and team, we're going to take notes, we'll follow up on anything that we did in our previous walk, and then we're going to document everything each and every day. Every time we do these, or at the end of the day, you can do kind of a summary of everything that you noticed on your walk. But this is really what your smarter shift is for this video, is actually going to be map your ship walk. I want you to learn your business like the back of your hand, and I want you to be in each and every one of those areas. The biggest thing with Smarter Hospitality Talks is I hope that I've taught you a little bit of something, or I hope that I've made you ask questions of yourself, or giving you some ideas on things that you can improve on. That's the goal here. I want people to think more clearly on how processes work, because in this day and age, we need to support our teams in each and every way. We need to approach our business as a team, and we need to approach complex situations with a lot of question asking, because that's the best way to move through. So, with the Smarter Hospitality Talks, these are very informal, straightforward, just got some earbuds and a PowerPoint presentation. but I want them to become very pivotal, almost like a TED Talk, because I want this information to be used each and every day in your operations. Feel free to put comments in the comment section, or feel free to reach out to us at HospIQ, which is Smarter Hospitality Starts Here, and feel free to ask those questions. If there's things that you don't agree with, I'd love to hear about that. Feel free to shoot us an email. Feel free to put it in the comments section. But then the biggest thing is make sure to take this information and apply it to your operations. And don't forget to always listen to your team. Have a great rest of your day. We look forward to seeing you in our next visit.